Welcome back to the Body Composition Coach podcast. It is Jono speaking, as always. I mean, it'd be a bit weird one day if you tuned in, it wasn't me speaking. Although if it was that way, that probably means I've sold the business and I've made millions, and I'm on a desert island somewhere and you never hear from me again. But anyway, I digress. You've probably noticed I'm somewhere a little bit different today. Well, I'm not. I'm actually just back where I started. So I'm back in my bedroom recording these. It's a little bit different. I've got a camera now and I've got a proper podcast microphone now. Actually, for those who are watching on YouTube, and even if you're listening, I'll tell you, but if you're watching, you would see it. This is the original, the OG microphone that I'm holding up to camera now, just in case you're listening and don't know what I'm talking about, which I started the podcast with. It's like a tiny little lapel mic that I got from Amazon for like 30 quid. So look, you're probably thinking, well, why are we back in the bedroom? Because I'm moving house. In simple terms, I won't bore you with it. It's extremely stressful, as most of you already know, or probably know if you've moved house yourself before. We've bought our first house, so we are probably. I say this, we're probably 2 or 3 days away from exchange. I'd like to think by the time you actually listen to this podcast, I've probably moved. I've hopefully moved, but the likelihood is, as house moves go, I'll probably be, still 6 weeks away from moving. You know how it is. But fingers crossed, I'm feeling optimistic. I'd hopefully be moving. But anyway, we can't see below the camera, or we can't see because if you're listening, is all the boxes around me of stuff that I've packed up. I like to be organised. But what it means in short term, in shorter words, let's say, is I'm recording the podcast from home because I didn't want to let you guys down. I didn't want to miss out on some of the information and the value that I like to give you every single week. And I was due a new batch, and look, I haven't got time to get to the studio today. So we are here at home setting up. But anyway, let's get on with the podcast. So as always, before I start any podcast, I give you a little bit of a nudge in the direction of giving me a 5-star review. And you're probably bored of hearing me say it. But the only reason I have to keep saying it is because thousands of you listen, like genuinely, which I'm really proud to say. Look, I just showed you my little mic where we started. I used to set my bed back there and just sit and talk into it. I'm really proud of the fact that thousands of you now listen. Clearly, some of the information that I'm giving is of value, or maybe you just listen for comedy value. I don't know, but hopefully there's some huge value you're getting from this. And because thousands of you listen, but only I think a handful of you have actually left a review, I'm gonna have to keep plugging it. Now, I don't know if you know how podcasts work, but the more reviews you leave me, the more comments you leave, the more interactions you leave on this podcast, the more people it reaches. It is as simple as that. It's kind of like Instagram. The more people that like a post, the more people that see it. Well, the same with podcasts. So the more you engage, the more you give me feedback, the more you comment, the more you review, the more people see it and the more people I can help. So I'm always going to push you to share this podcast, get it out there. Let's get this information to women who need it. That was always the reason I started this podcast. I want all the women who need this information to have it at their fingertips. But anyway, now you've left that review, let's get stuck in to today's podcast. So I'm going to call this podcast, I was thinking about the name of the podcast. I'm going to call it Net Deficit, Not Always Deficit. And I think it's a huge mistake that women make when it comes to dieting and it comes to choosing their strategy. And maybe they don't even realize there's more than one strategy. But when it comes to choosing their strategy, it doesn't quite align with the reality of the diet or the deficit they need to be in. So you will be no stranger now to the fact that I talk quite a lot about the fact that a lot of women have to have a very or a reasonably low calorie intake to lose weight. It depends what you class as very low, right? Some women absolutely have to eat like 1,200 calories, right? And it's really unhelpful, and you'll have heard me talk about this by now. It's really unhelpful when people are saying, you're eating like a toddler, and not really. Like some people do have to. If you're sedentary or if you're small and you don't have the option to move more, which is always the go-to, well, just move more and you can eat more calories. Okay, well that's useful. But if you're stuck at your desk 12 hours a day, it might not be overly possible. So some of you, if you're small or if you're pretty sedentary and you don't have the option to move more, might need to be eating 12, 13, 1,400 calories. Even if you aren't particularly small, you might be 5'7" and you might be a little bit overweight. And that's still okay. Actually, for some of you still, you might need to be on reasonably low calories. And I'm always very honest about that. It's something I'm really passionate about, being honest about. But it doesn't all have to be doom and gloom, right? You can actually use, I'm going to share some strategies with you today. You can use some particular strategies, and I like to use these with clients. I'm using them with quite a few of my clients at the minute, just because we generally tend to work with people are on the smaller side or sedentary. That's kind of my job. You know, you've either got a desk job or you're small. Anyone who's listened to this. So we like to use one of these. I'm going to give you 3 of my strategies. We've got quite a few, but the podcast would be hours long otherwise. So I'm going to share 3 of my most popular to help you to understand how to create a net deficit across time rather than always being in a deficit. So when I say always being in a deficit, what I mean by that is, let's say your deficit calories are 1400 per day, right? You got to eat 1400 calories a day to lose body fat, right? Every day for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, however long you're going to do a fat loss phase for. That can be quite mind numbing. And you're probably thinking, some of you will be sat there thinking, yep, I know that feeling. You know, thinking, right, I've got another 10 weeks of this. I've got another 12 weeks of this. And the chances of you then completing the 12 weeks, if it's a mind-numbing thought to you or it's a very depressing thought as to how little you're going to get to eat, the chances of you actually being successful with it are very, very slim. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to eat that low calories forever. I want to be really clear about that. You will come out and do a build phase or a maintenance phase and lift your metabolism and all those different things that you'll have heard people talk about. You'll get to do that. But to start with, you might have to go low in your fat loss phase. But anyway, for the 8, 10, 12 week period that you're dieting, you can just stick to your calories for that time. That's one way of doing it. But one of the things I've noticed is hunger rises, especially like when you're on low calories. Your hunger is going to rise over time. You know, every week that goes by, hunger is going to get a little bit worse. Fatigue will start to rise. You'll start to become more tired. Your mood will start to get worse as you work your way through the weeks. Your adherence then generally becomes more and more difficult. And you might be thinking this, like, look, I'm always able to do it for 2 weeks, but then I lose it. Or I'm always able to do it 3 weeks or 4 weeks and I lose it. And generally what we tend to see is that binge restrict cycle begins or continues depending on where you sit with it. Now, like I said, it's especially common in smaller women or sedentary women. But you might be thinking, you know, all of those things happen to me. You know, my hunger rises, my fatigue rises, my mood drops, my adherence drops, my binge restrict cycle kicks in, or you might be able to just pick 1 or 2 of them that are happening. Now, in that situation, if you've felt like you're banging your head against a brick wall, trying to stick to the calories each week, but failing, I'm going to get you to try 1 of 3 things. The first one, strategy number 1, is what I call weekly undulating calories. Now, undulating just basically means like different from 1 week to the next. So let's say, we'll use the same example, 1400 calories is still the example. So let's say in week 1 of your deficit, you did 1600 calories. But in week 2 of your deficit, you did 1400 calories. And in week 3 of your deficit, you did 1200 calories. Now, you might be thinking, well, 1200 sounds low. That's lower than I need to be. Of course, yes. But 1600 is higher than you need to be. So here's the thing. For that 1600 week, you have more flexibility, more ability to do social things, more ability to fit in things that you enjoy in your diet, less hunger, more energy, all these different things because your calories are a little bit higher. You're still in a deficit. You know, 200 calories above your deficit calories will still be a small deficit, but it's very gentle, right? It's like an easier week, a more energetic week, a more filling week, a more fulfilling week. That's week 1. Week 2 might be your actual deficit, which is like of medium difficulty. And then, you know, there's not really a lot to say about that. I mean, that's your deficit number we said, 1400. But then week 3 of your deficit might be like your hard week or your like, you know, strap yourself in week where you go to 1200 calories, right? Lower than you need to be, or like a more harsh deficit or a harder deficit, but it's only for a very short period of time. And this is just something that I've noticed. I've done this for 17 years, right? And something I've noticed is if you give somebody a short time frame to work to, they always tend to be more successful, right? Shorter time frames always tend to be more successful. So what I like to do is be like, look, I want you to strap yourself in. That 1400 week is going to be difficult or challenging, let's say, or of medium difficulty. But that 1200 week, you're going to have to strap in for that. You're going to have to go really hard at that, give it everything. But at the end of it, we're going to go to 1600 every single day. And you'll be able to eat more. You'll be able to have the chocolate that you want. You'll be able to have all this stuff. Just lift your calories again. And then we'll go again. So it's almost like you have this 1 week every 3 where you've just got that little bit more flexibility and potentially a little bit more enjoyment, depending on how you look at it. So it's more like psychologically, it doesn't just feel like, oh my God, I've got to burn 1,400 calories for the next 12 weeks. But if you actually do the numbers, your average across the 12 weeks will be 1,400. You've done exactly the same thing with exactly the same outcome, but you've just undulated and moved and chopped and changed your calories a little bit. Now, look, I would just give you some advice here. Preset what these are going to look like. Okay, so don't just chop and change each week. So don't just get to like week 3 and be like, right, I'm going to do a 1,600 calorie week this week because, I feel a bit tired and I'd like to just add a bit more. And then the next week comes about, actually, I'll probably do a 1,600 calorie week again this week. Don't make your decisions based on like feelings. Like, let's have this pre-structured. Let's have this actually all in place, 16, 14, 12. It doesn't have to be those numbers, by the way. If your calorie deficit numbers are 1,500, it might be 17, 15, 13. Or if your calorie deficit numbers are 1,700, it might be 19, 17, 15. But stick maybe like 200 calories in between each one. Psychologically, it just feels that little bit better, that little bit easier, and it's like a bit of a short burst. Now, in the same kind of breath, because it's kind of linked, strategy number 2 is, I suppose it's kind of like cycle-based calories, or cycle. It's not cycle syncing in the way that you would have heard people talk about cycle syncing on social media. So let's call it cycle-based calories. One of the things I like to do, in the same way with the undulating calories, you line up like different weeks, like week 1, week 2, week 3. I like to do a similar thing with my female clients, but around their cycle. Now, I'm actually not a huge fan of adapting training around your cycle. Look, if you have a little bit less energy during certain parts of your cycle, then just expect performance to be down. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to change your training sessions or train in a different way. But that aside, that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I do like to do is adjust calories based on a cycle. So if, for example, you know, and it's always been the case because you understand your cycle better than anyone, that you're hungriest and have the least energy during, let's say, luteal phase, for the week or so of your luteal phase, you might have 1,600 calories. Let's just use the same numbers for ease, right? You might have 1,600 calories. And then it might come to your ovulation week, and you're like, actually, do you know what? I'm all right during that week. It's not like my peak week. It's not my best week, but I'm okay during that phase. You might go to 1,400 for that phase. And then it might be like your most energetic. It's going to be, person dependent and woman individual, but you might get to a week of your cycle where you feel super energetic and where you've got the most energy and the least hunger. And that might be a week where you're like, right, I'm going 1,200 this week, right? But again, the same kind of rules would apply with this strategy. So strategy number 2, the cycle-based calories. Because if you, again, just do this based on what you think you're going to feel, it will not work. Believe me, it won't work. It won't be as successful. You need to strategize this. It has to be strategized. And I always agree this stuff with clients beforehand when I'm going to use this. These are the weeks that we will go higher. These are the weeks that will go lower. And that's kind of the set structure. If you go into any of these things based on like, right, well, I'm actually just feeling a little bit hungrier, so it's probably my the phase of my cycle I'm in, so I'm going to eat a bit more, you're going to end up all over the place. You'll be all over the shop. So don't do that. But do, if you feel like it would work for you, sync your calories around your cycle to give you more calories when you have more energy, and just go that little bit harder and dig in a little bit more when you know you're going to have that more energy available. Now, strategy number 3. So far we've got undulating calories, which is almost like a 3-week or 4-week cycle, however you want to set it up, where you go high, medium, low with your calories to kind of manipulate your energy, but the net deficit is the same. Strategy number 2 was the cycle-based calories. So just having more of your calories on the weeks where you're potentially going to have the least energy because of your cycle, and then vice versa. And then strategy 3 that I use quite a lot, this is potentially the one that I use the most because it's relevant to men and women, and it was relevant to everybody basically, so it gets used the most, is I call them fat loss sprints. So it goes back to what I was saying in strategy number 1, which was about giving somebody like a short time frame or a short target or a short-term focus, and it's using that to your advantage. So for example, if your calories, we'll use the same amount just because it's easy in terms of numbers. If your deficit's 1,400, let's say that's what it is, we might go into a 4-week block of 1400. Get stuck in, go all in, no deviance from it. Adherence needs to be fully on it, 100%, but you're only going to have to do it for 4 weeks. That is it, just 4 weeks. And believe me, when you know you only have to do it for 4 weeks versus 12 weeks or 16 weeks, depending on how long your dieting phase is going to be, it becomes so much more manageable. Making the right decisions, committing to the process just becomes so much more manageable. I've seen it time and time again because I've only got to do this for 4 weeks. That is it. It's just a short burst, 4 weeks. So then you're going to say, well, what happens at the end of the 4 weeks? That's your diet break. So at the end of the 4 weeks, you would have a set diet break of some sort of a time, right? So let's say it's 1 week, let's say it's 2 weeks. It can even be 3 weeks or 4 weeks. It can be whatever you want it to be. Depends how quickly you want to move through your dieting phase, because even though you're not like in a deficit for your diet break, you're going to be going back to it. So you're not really like out of your deficit, if you know what I mean. Like mentally, you're still in it. So basically what I'm trying to explain to you is you have like a 4-week block where you can adhere to it. You know that you have to dig in, but it's only going to be for a short period of time, which just makes it that little bit easier. Then you have a set diet break. In this example, let's use like a 2-week break where you'll spend 2 weeks at maintenance. So I'm just going to pick some random numbers. Okay, please don't think that this is exactly going to be your numbers, but maybe your deficit is 1400 and maybe your maintenance is 1900. So for 4 weeks, 1400, 4 steps forwards, let's call it. And then for 2 weeks, 1900. Now that's not 2 steps back. And I want to be really clear about that. It's not making 2 steps back. You're not going to go backwards over that time. You're just going to hold the line. So it's like 4 steps forwards and 2 steps, holding the line for 2 weeks and then 4 steps forwards again. 4 steps forwards, hold the line, 4 steps forwards. Now look, it obviously makes the whole dieting phase or the dieting phase as a whole that little bit longer. If you were going to do a 12-week dieting phase at 1400 calories, but you end up doing 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, obviously you've added 4 weeks to your 12-week dieting phase. So you've made it a 16-week dieting phase. But I actually think that's irrelevant if you are one of these people who has tried to do like a 12-week dieting phase at 1400 calories and you can't, then look, if it takes 16 weeks, but you actually get there, it's probably a good outcome, right? It's probably worthwhile. So 4 weeks on, 4 steps forward, but you got to be adherent, right? And this is what I'd be super clear about. If this strategy of 4 weeks on, 2 weeks holding the line is going to work, you've got to be adherent in the 4 weeks. And I've also seen this happen. It becomes a right mess if you, in your 4 weeks, you're just not adherent, right? Because then it's like, well, do you take the diet break? Do you not? Do you actually need it? Because you actually just had a week of, massively blowing your calories. So do you need that diet break that was scheduled, etc.? So that is the drawback, I suppose, of this third strategy. And that is if you're not adherent for 4 weeks, it kind of just goes out the window. It becomes a bit of a shocker and a bit of a farce. So I think the main overall point I want to make here is that it's not that you need to like dig in harder. It's not that you just need to be more disciplined or you need to be more structured or you just need to have more willpower, because that's generally like where women seem to go with this when they don't stick to their diet for 12 weeks. It's like, I just need more willpower. I need to be more disciplined. No. You need a better strategy. If you've repeatedly banged your head against a brick wall in trying to stick to your calories for 12 weeks at a time or 16 weeks at a time or whatever it might be, if you've repeatedly done that and the outcome is repeatedly the same where you fail or you just aren't able to see it out, change your strategy. Undulating calories. Have higher weeks, have medium weeks, and have low weeks. It all spins back to the same thing. It's short-term focus, short-term relief, short-term focus, short-term relief. The second thing, cycle syncing, I don't want to call it cycle syncing, cycle-based calories. So, playing to your strengths. If you know you're more energetic at certain parts of your cycle, go harder there. If you know you just need a bit more food and you struggle a bit during, let's say, luteal phase, which is one of the common ones, then, of course, maybe eat more calories there. Maybe give yourself a bit more of a break and a bit more energy there, mentally and physically, right? So that's 2. And then 3 is the diet sprints or the diet breaks, however you want to call it. So like 4-week blocks of sprints where you go really hard, or not really hard, just as hard as you need to go. Let me be clear with that. As hard as you need to go, and then you take 2 weeks. Again, doesn't have to be those exact time frames, but then you take 2 weeks as an example to just take your foot off the gas, sit at maintenance, re-energize, refuel, mentally just rest, go out, enjoy yourself, whatever. It's still got to be only maintenance, so you can't just blow it. And then back into a deficit for 4 weeks again. So all the three things revolve around the same thing. It's like short-term effort, short-term bursts, and playing to your strengths. So look, I would recommend those strategies over just trying to be more disciplined and just trying to bang your head against a brick wall. Hopefully you found that useful. If there is anything that I want you to take away from this podcast, it's just go and try one of those strategies. Go and give it a go. If you're one of them people who has been going around in circles for quite a while, go and try one of those strategies. Come back to me. Leave it in the comments. Let me know when you've had a go at it. How did you get on? Or let me know in the comments which one are you actually going to try, which one you're going to have a go at, which one sounds like it would work best for you. If you let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear it. I'll come back to you. So look, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure recording this from my bedroom this time. The next few will probably be from here as well. But hopefully, by the time you're watching this, I'll be in my new house. I'll let you know. I'll let you know in the comments. But as always, if you do want to work with us, if you do want to have a more specific strategy that is aligned to you when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to training, but when it also comes to developing the correct mindset or the resilient mindset required for getting in shape, building muscle, losing body fat, that's what we specialize in here at the Body Recon Project, then all you have to do is reach out. Send me a DM, send me a private message somewhere, comment on a post, ask me for some help. We're always willing to at least have that conversation with you. If we can help you, we will. If we can't, I'll definitely point you in the right direction as to where you need to be. So your best place to find me is on Instagram, Body Composition Coach. If you drop us a message on there, let me know what you're struggling with, what you need help with. I'll be able to point you in the right direction. So look, for now, from my bedroom, it's been nice. It's been nice going back to the roots of where we started the podcast. It's been a pleasure, as always. Leave me a review, leave me a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.